First, protesters shouted out, they walked out. One was even escorted out during President Trump's first address of a Republican Congress. Here with analysis and takeaways, we're joined by John Daigle, former political reporter and longtime political consultant here in Jacksonville. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Ann.
So I would be curious just on your chief takeaways. I mean, how was what you expected to hear different from what you did hear?
I think in many ways it really depended on your perspective, your political stance in terms of what you saw last night. I mean, in a lot of ways, it felt like kind of being forced to sit through a MAGA rally. There were certainly some really good policy issues brought out last night. There were some tax cuts for car interest payments. There were childhood cancer initiatives. There were a number of things in the speech that could have appealed to both Republicans, independents, and Democrats, but they were so overshadowed by the Trumpian drama that we're used to seeing, and it actually was on both sides, which was kind of disappointing. Trump, the initiatives he talked about, tax cuts, and the long list of fraud that he allegedly has found in the USAID. Those were interesting points, but he had to blend those in together, first of all, with a lot of personal insults, calling Biden out by name, blaming Biden for the price of eggs, calling Senator Warren Pocahontas. Those are very unpresidential things that obviously his base loves, but really makes it hard for independents like me to really focus on the policy that he was discussing. There was just so much in there again, and the Democrats. I was disappointed in the Democrats who were in the galley too. I mean, I'm used to seeing that venue, that setting as a much more honorable kind of event, and it really just sort of devolved into a MAGA rally with some protesters in the galley, which did not come off to me as presidential or befitting of our Congress.
What do you think the strategy for both sides was in this setting? Do you think they came in with a strategy specific, to their goals,
Yeah.
and was it effective?
I mean, I think the Democrats, obviously, the ones who were there last night, and a number of Democrats did not show up last night. A number of them had telecasted that they were going to sit out in protest, but the ones who are there, they're obviously coming under pressure from their constituents to show some kind of resistance, even though it is clear that right now the conservatives or the Republicans have the Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they're really, other than making noise, there's really not much the Democrats can do to, quote, resist right now. Trump seems much more interested in what he can accomplish over the next 180 days versus what he can do over the next 4 years. I would have thought after his first term, when he lost the House in 2018 and basically spent the last 2 years of his first term fighting impeachment inquiries and getting almost nothing done, that this time around he would be much more interested in forming coalitions, bringing people into his camp so that he can govern effectively for the entire 4 years. But it seemed like he's much more interested in full steam ahead. What can he do between now and the midterms, and really without much concern for what's going to happen in the midterms.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to John Daigle about last night's presidential address to Congress. If you watched the speech or have comments about it, you can join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. You mentioned some of the partisan displays. We know that, for instance, the lawmaker Al Green was removed. There were Democrats holding up little black placards that said things like fraud and Musk steals and lies. But Trump responded, and I just kind of want to play one of those moments that you're discussing.
Sure.
Once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
Yeah, I mean, that clip was moments after, at the early part of his speech, where he asked Democrats to come on board and suggested that they should be willing to come on board and help him with his agenda. And then moments later, he essentially attacked them, as you just heard in that clip. And to me, it harkens back to something I keep hearing these days, that the current Republican Party is very good at revolution. And it seems obviously, that's what's happening right now at the federal level is a revolution, but not very good at governing. And what I heard last night was a leader who is very interested in a revolution, but not very interested in governing.
How do you see this administration's approach right now if things sort of remain on the track that they're on as you head towards the midterms?
Well, I mean, that's the question is how long, it's very easy to sign executive orders. And what I'm seeing is a president who is very interested in what he can accomplish on a temporary basis through executive orders rather than through legislation that will last beyond, the midterms or beyond his presidency. And again, I think there's a lot. Again, the only party right now that is growing in America is independents and MPAs. And I think they will be very important in the midterms. And I just don't see anything coming out of the Trump administration that, there are some things that independents would be attracted to. He was elected on a mandate based on the economy, but 80% of his speech last night was not about the economy. He could have focused on the tax cuts that he's proposing, or reducing the deficit, or economic issues that would have appealed to independents. But instead, it was more about his work on immigration and some of his, disinformation points that he keeps bringing up, even though so much of what he said was easily refutable. There was a lot of good truth in what he said, but it was mixed in with so many obvious falsehoods that people who were trying to watch it objectively really kind of threw it out. I mean, my dad is the one who always told me, your word is the easiest thing to give away and the hardest thing to get back. And at this point, for those of us trying to be objective and watch this, it's so hard to take him at his word because so much of what he says is mixed in with obvious falsehoods.
I want to take a call from Kendra in Mandarin. Good morning, Kendra. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning.
Go ahead, Kendra.
Yes, I'd like to state that it is incumbent upon a president to enact legislation and policy that benefits the American constituency. Donald Trump, regardless of what he said last night or what he says today, tomorrow, or next week, is patently a swindler who propagates disinformation and enacts policies that simply benefit himself and other billionaires. Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Kendra. To your point about independence, John, there was just this week released a new NPR PBS News Marist poll, and it showed that independents gave Trump and Doge and Musk, all three separately, just a 34% favorability rating. And 2/3 of independents think Trump is moving too fast without enough recognition of consequences.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that got Representative Al Green thrown out, the Texas representative who stood up at the beginning of the speech and pointed his cane at Trump and eventually was removed from the chambers, what he was shouting, you couldn't really hear it, but that Trump doesn't have a mandate. And I think Trump keeps, saying it over and over again that he has this mandate, but the fact of the matter is more voters voted against him than for him last November. And as you said, the polls, at least recent polls, have not shown in his favor. But again, I don't think Trump and his advisors are paying attention to the media that is reporting those polls. I think that the media that they're watching and that they care about are reporting other numbers.
Right. We also have a call from Philip on the West Side. Good morning, Philip. Go ahead.
Good morning. I have a comment. Under Donald Trump, our country has become the selfish states of America. Lying has become the new truth, and dishonesty has become the new honesty. That's my comment.
Thanks, Philip. Appreciate it. I will note recently the opinion section of the New York Times, I think last Sunday, printed its opinion, the whole section, upside down and backwards, which is obviously a messaging from that newspaper.
Yeah, I didn't see that. On the way home last night, I did local TV analysis last night, and I was driving home last night, and I kind of put on some right-wing talk show hosts just to kind of listen to their reaction. And I think it was interesting because what I heard on the way home from the show last night was them saying, why didn't he talk more about the economy? That's what we care about. Even though immigration has always been a strong issue for him and his base, it seems to me that what the people who elected him this time want to hear more about is the economy. And he actually has some stuff he could have focused more on tax cuts. He could have explained how these tariffs are going to actually help average Americans. I know he loves the tariffs, but I think the average American does not connect how these tariffs in the long run are supposed to help them. And I think he missed some opportunities by doing that would have endeared him to his base, as well as helped him with the independents and those in the middle.
We've got a call from John in Riverside. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Good morning. I just wanted to say this crap about dead people receiving Social Security payments is crap. My partner died on July 18th. The following week, he got his August payment. The week after that, I got a letter saying they wanted that money back, and the funds in his account were frozen until we sent it back. They know when somebody dies. They know quite a bit about it. Another side story on this, my brother worked for a charity in Los Angeles, and one day ICE raided the place. And they were like 11 people of different ages who'd all gotten their Social Security numbers in Lake Charles, Louisiana, within like an 18-month period. And they just knew this had to be fraud. As it turned out, there was a legitimate explanation about why this had happened. But they were that careful about it. They have very, very good records on it. So the problem with these stories about these long things, I have a friend, I'm 77, I have a friend who is still coding for the government because it's all in some ancient computer language that young people like Big Balls, our chief auditor, are not familiar with. And so when they go in there and search it, they're making mistakes because they don't understand. I believe it's cobalt.
Thanks for the call, John. Appreciate it. He did talk at length about fraud, listing a number of examples, John. And one of the things that he cited was these people that are over 120, some over 200 years old, listed as, people in the Social Security system. And that's sort of one of those things that, as you noted, had been pre-debunked. Those are people that typically don't have a date of death registered, as opposed to somebody who's actually receiving a payment.
I actually thought that could have been one of the highlights of the evening. He went on this long litany where he listed a whole group of ridiculous, what seemed to be ridiculous expenses by the U.S. government that had been found during Elon Musk's Doge audits. But the problem was if he had done that with verifiable facts, but he did that part of his speech and blended it with some stuff that had been already clearly refuted, that it sort of diluted that whole part of the speech. It made me, as someone who didn't know all the background behind all that, doubt everything he was saying, because he would say 6 different things, 2 of them which I knew were false. So I had to end up doubting that whole list of alleged savings that had been found. And it just left me feeling like, what can I believe? And again, I know his base believes everything he says, but I really believe that the audience he needs to be, worrying about right now are more the moderates and the people in the middle who will decide whether or not he keeps the House and the Senate in the midterms.
I'm going to take a call from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Hi. My statement is that how does an opposition party act towards an administration that is not acting normal? Outright lies. This president incited an insurrection and did nothing to help the Capitol Police for hours and hours. So what do they do? I admire the choices that they made. Some didn't go, some booed, I also like the idea of Republican Congress people are not holding town halls anymore, and that coming in to fill them are Democratic. So that is a way to do it, but I don't expect people to act like the olden days when this president is not honoring anything that we have established.
Yeah, I mean that's a very tough question, and I've been hearing a lot of debate about what is the appropriate response at this moment in time, and Ann and I were talking before the show started about a great op-ed that was in the New York Times recently by James Carville, where he argued that the best response right now for the Democrats is not the kind of vocal protest resistance we saw last night, but to let them do it. Carville's argument was, right now the current Republican Party is great at sparking revolutions, but they're terrible at governing. And his argument is, let them do it. They're really, the Democrats aren't in a position to do anything but holler and scream, and that seems to be what the MAGA base loves anyways. So why not just let them do what they're going to do? A lot of people are going to get hurt in the process, but the American people will see that they are not good at governing right now.
I want to ask you just about the pace of change that we've seen. I know that there was some strategy that was discussed by people like Steve Bannon, who's a close advisor of the president, about moving with, I think he called it muzzle velocity, saying basically if we drop 3 things a day, the media will fixate on one, the other 2 will sort of move along, and that there's just no time for people to react or to report. So some of this stuff is happening without knowledge.
It's actually a very effective strategy, and it's kind of what a lot of the media have been talking about in terms of flooding the zone. It's like trying to fact check him is almost an impossible task these days. And I think Bannon's point is right. I mean, if you move, I think in their hearts they know they have about 180 days to accomplish anything they want to do. And I think Bannon's point is move as fast as you can. Let's get as much done as we can.
What is that timeline again?
I think about 180 days is about the time period before really we begin the political season for the midterms.
Okay.
And it's really what he accomplished between now and next winter.
Okay.
And then by then, midterms will be kicking in, and as we know, not much happens in Washington in the run up for a big election cycle. So I think they know that they have a very limited window in which to accomplish anything, and if they're going to actually get stuff done, they have a few months to do it. They don't have 4 years.
Right. Got a call from Michael in St. Augustine. Good morning, Michael. Go ahead. Michael, are you there? Go ahead.
Go ahead with what?
Go ahead, Michael, with your comment.
Oh, my comment was it's just that there was a person who just made a comment on your program, and he didn't know what. Oh, I could hear it in the background. Yeah, the computer program. The computer program is called Cobalt. Cobalt. Yeah.
You're talking about the Social Security program that was used to.
And that came out probably about 2 weeks ago when Elon Musk had claimed that he found a number of people who were receiving Social Security checks who were allegedly 150 years old. And I think of just in a couple of days, it was debunked, which says that because of the way Cobalt is written, that sort of the default is 150. And I know nothing about technology, but the point was that anybody who understood that computer language easily understood why there were so many people listed at 150. And it was amazing that, a guy walking around wearing tech support T-shirts did not understand why there were many, many people listed at 150 years old because of that COBOL programming.
So you did say, there's moments of policy throughout all of this. There's some congressional asks, money for deportations, tax cuts. new enhanced police protections, a crime bill that would include the death penalty for the murder of a police officer, and then also this missile defense system.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think most people who have any military background at all understand why a Golden Dome missile defense system over the United States is never going to happen. There was interest. He proposed tax cuts for again a tax allowance for interest on car loans. That was interesting. Again, an initiative to fight childhood cancer. That could have been a highlight. Even Panama and Greenland. He could have explained why those were crucial, but he didn't. And the speech was long, so he had plenty of time to. Again, I think one of the best things he could have done is explain to the American people why his tariff idea will help our economy in the long run. He talked about tariffs and he loves them, and the retaliatory tariffs coming in April, but he still, I don't think, has explained to the average person how tariffs will ultimately help their pocketbook.
Or even explained, I think, to some of the people that he's proposing taxing, kind of what purpose it serves. I mean, I know that after the stock market took a real hit, after Monday, Tuesday, then he was talking about rolling back tariffs as soon as today.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of I mean, it's really hard to follow. And again, going back to your comment, what Steve Bannon said, it's part of the flooding the zone strategy. It's impossible to, if you can't even follow the news on a day-to-day basis, it's really hard to criticize it. And I think one of the main messages last night was full steam ahead, and from him, from Trump, and I think their strategy is let's move full steam ahead as fast as we can do for as long as we can do it until politics gets in the way.
Well, John Daigle, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming in today after a late night and talking about the speech.
Thank you very much, Ann. Glad to be here.